I'm going to let Justin take it away.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, everyone. Like Heather said, you are welcome to ask any questions or speak up anytime that you would like. Like she said, I will ask you a couple of questions. Please, if you have any answers or want to say anything, please speak up. So with that, we're going to get started. I would bet everybody that's in here probably has the Blanc-Pastel benefit. So I just wanted to start out by quickly telling you about that a little bit. So just a couple quick things. Blanc-Pastel is here to help you with, any challenge that you can think of. So it doesn't have to be anything, that's diagnosable. It could be stress. It could be family relationships. It could be work issues, whatever it is, Blanc-Pastel's here for you to come in and get some help with those things. So feel free to call and make an appointment anytime you would like. So a couple things that go with that is it's completely free, so it's going to be free to you and most likely, anybody that lives with you and any of your dependents. And so all of those people are welcome to come in. So with that, some people wonder if it's free, then, my business is paying for it, and so they probably know about what I'm coming in to say and what I'm talking about and when I'm coming in. Totally not the case. So it's 100% confidential, so you're welcome to obviously come in, and then it's going to be free, and nobody's ever going to know about it that you came in. So you're welcome to tell whoever, but for us, we don't talk. Most times it's going to be face-to-face counseling just in our office. Sometimes it could be over the phone if you wanted to do a session over the phone, or it could even be very similar to this, with Zoom, and you could see the therapist and they can see you. We have a lot of locations in Utah, so all along from Logan all the way down to Utah County, so a lot of different. But we also have the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week crisis line. So if you're ever in a crisis, we really want to help you with that. So please, call in if you need to. It's the same number that you get a hold of us on any time. So call that number if you're at the crisis. So most days, our hours are going to be 9 to 9. And so for people that are working and can't get off work, we're in the office. We're here to help as much as possible. Simplest thing in the world with making an appointment, all you have to do is call the number and just say, hey, I'd like to meet with a therapist, and they'll get you set up, closest to where you live or on the phone or whatever it is. But really simple. Most times you're not going to need your insurance card or any money or anything to do with that. You just need yourself, and that's all you need for your appointment. Does anybody have any questions about Blanc-Pastel or any of that stuff?
I don't have any questions come in yet, but I did want to say again that if you do have a question, you'll just need to unmute yourself. And if you need help unmuting yourself, you can send me a private chat and I will unmute you. And then I forgot to mention, if you don't feel comfortable just asking your question yourself, you can send me a private chat on here and I will ask it for you. That's all.
Okay. All right. So let's start talking about stress. So one thing I wanted to kind of start out with on stress is something for you guys to think about. Who, in here has experienced a little bit of stress in the last year, we'll say. Just kind of think about that for yourself. And then you can put yourself in the middle category, who's, experienced, a good amount, but not a ton. And then who's experienced a ton of stress. So if you were one of the people that said you've experienced a ton of stress, then with some research that's coming out, you're 43% more likely to pass away this coming year. That's kind of a scary statistic. But one thing to think about with that is if you view stress as something that's helpful and actually beneficial to you, then you're actually healthier than the people that say they have no stress in their life. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how we view stress. So we're going to talk about stress, but I want you to think about how you're viewing it. And is this helpful to me or damaging to me? Because like I said, those people that think that have a lot of stress in their life, but view it differently, don't have that same, they're actually more healthy than people that say they have no stress. Kind of interesting, and I'm going to tell you where I get that statistic in the future. If you let's talk about stress. So it is, known as the #1 problem in America. And one thing to think about with this is stress isn't totally ever going away. It's more how we manage it. And we're going to talk about how it's not going away. So a lot of the reasons why we go to the doctor is because of stress-related issues. And we don't go in and say, hey, I'm here because of stress. We go in and say, I have this cold, or I have this cardiovascular issues, or whatever it is. So like it's saying, 75 to 90% of the reasons we're going to the doctor is because of stress. So we really, really want to manage that better. One thing to think about is this is kind of a world issue rather than just here in the United States. We're all struggling with. Okay, and this is why stress is here to stay. It's it's the wear and tear of everyday life. So we're all experiencing that. These are some of the things that suggest that stress is going to be around for a while. Is time, money, relationships aren't things that are going away. We all have to go to work, and we all have, relationships, whether that's kids or significant people in our lives. And so we're going to experience stress from those different things. And it can be good stress, and it can be, distress. And we're going to, so stress is going to be with us. So rather than trying to get rid of stress, we want to learn how to manage it more successfully. That's kind of this presentation and stress. I want you guys to kind of think about this. What are some warning signs of stress for you? How do you know when you're stressed? If anybody wants to speak up, you're welcome to. If not, I can show you a list of things that we've come up with.
I'll speak up. I get snarky. So if I'm stressed, especially at home, I realize that I'm being kind of a brat to everyone around me. So that's one of my signs of when I'm stressed.
Yeah. One big one for me, I can even, think about, even if I'm just sitting somewhere and I'm stressed, I can feel it kind of in my left shoulder blade for some reason. So I almost get aches and pains that kind of come up. So those are some things that I can feel. Yeah, I see some things in the chat that are coming up. Some people are saying, headaches. I become more critical of myself. Sleep's an issue. Clenching my jaw. Stress eating. Yeah. One of them, you get really quiet. So rather than Heather getting a little bit sassy, this person gets quiet. So, yeah. So there is some quiet and some withdrawing. So as you can see, there's a ton of different things that happen. And one thing why I want you guys to kind of think about yours is because it's hard to do something about it unless you know, oh, this is when I'm actually feeling stressed. This is something that happens to me. So if you can say that's a warning sign, then we can try to deal with it a little bit differently. The sooner the better, rather than it causing us a lot of trouble. So here are some that I've talked about with lots of people, and you guys are even putting on there, and so if any of these you have questions about, or that they're really big ones for you, like I said, you're welcome to say something about them. But a lot of these go with what you guys are saying, from physical symptoms to actual behaviors to actual thinking. A lot of times when we get pretty stressed, sometimes we, don't function as well, and we just worry a lot. So those are a lot of things that are happening with that. I'm going to look at chat just a tiny bit more. People talking about really shutting down. Eating is a part of that, is what I said. So yeah, so like I said, stress is a very difficult one, and one that's going to be with us. So let's figure out how to manage it as effectively as possible. So a couple things for you on what stress does to people. So it just makes us able to handle less things in general. So if you're at work and you're pretty stressed and somebody, your boss comes and says, hey, I got this other thing for you to do, this new project, then you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. We have those thoughts going through our mind, and it can kind of take us down a spiral. We talked about the health problems of, that's a lot of the reasons why we're going to the doctor or we get sick. Right? I'm sure you've all heard that when you're preparing for a project or something's really busy at work, or back when you were going to school, you had a test coming up, that's the time that you would get sick. And it's a lot of times it's because you're stressed, and so your immune system is working on that rather than keeping off colds and other things like that. Something to really think about. Relationships, struggle a lot when we're under stress. Any thoughts from you guys about why relationships struggle when you're stressed? I can look at the comments on that if you have any comments, or you can speak up if you would like.
Communication is difficult.
Yeah, makes it harder to communicate. Why do you think that is, would you say?
Because you're not thinking clearly.
Yeah.
And you react.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're not thinking clearly, you react to little things like this, like Grant saying you lose patience and your temper's shorter. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, relationships do struggle a lot more when you're stressed. And so one thing just to think about with that is, if you are stressed, talking to your partner or whoever it is, and just saying, hey, I had a really difficult day at work, or I've been really stressed lately, maybe we could do something calming, whether that's taking a walk, or let's rather than staying home and cooking a meal, let's go out to a restaurant that could be calming or relaxing. Let's do something that might change how I'm feeling, take away some of the stress that I'm having. This is kind of, these last two I feel kind of go together. It kind of, for me, when I get stressed, I start thinking about all of the things that are going wrong rather than thinking about any of the good stuff. And I can name them off, and this is bad, and this is bad, and just kind of thinking about all of those things, because they kind of just spiral together, and it's kind of a downward spiral. So luckily for you guys, I brought you kind of a simple stress reduction kit that I don't want you to do too much with, but here's some things for you. So give that a check and see if that's helped anybody out for a stress reduction kit lately. So as we know from the football and other sporting events, probably giving you a concussion is probably one you shouldn't do too much of. That's why this is just for really, really special occasions. Don't ever use that one. But as you guys can see, to me, in one time in giving this presentation, I kind of thought about, how is this stress reduction kit too much different than the ways we try to numb ourselves out by drugs or alcohol? And to me, it's not terribly different. We try to numb ourselves out so we don't feel that stress or that anxiety or depression or whatever it is. And so we go to something else to solve that issue. Whereas let's try to learn some things that might help us long term, rather than numbing it out and then feeling terrible in the morning from whether it's a concussion or a hangover, any of those types. But like I said, looking for ways to help in the long term. So has anybody ever heard that stress could be good? Kind of talked about that a little bit today, just in my beginning statistic, but I was giving this presentation one time, and I gave those previous slides that you guys have seen, and somebody said, well, you know, he looked pretty angry in the beginning, was very frustrated with what I was talking about. So I tried to, one, not asking too many questions because I didn't want him to derail my presentation. But after a bit, I asked him, that it's looking like you're kind of frustrated. Is there something you want to say about stress? And he said that he read a book that talked about how stress can be good for us, and we make it a bad thing, and how helpful it is, and all of these things. So he told me what that book was, and I'm going to tell you about that book because does have a lot of really good stuff in it. And that book is kind of where my first statistic came from. So distress is usually when we're talking about the negative stress, the stress that most people think about. The Eustress is the stress that is going to be more positive, it's going to be more beneficial to us, that we can kind of look at. And so some like a deadline is usually that, maybe a deadline at work or even goals that we set can cause us some stress. Like if we're trying to lose weight, and so we're thinking about, okay, well, by March, I want to be down 4 pounds or whatever it is. So you're putting a deadline on yourself. You're putting a goal that's going to cause you a little bit of stress, but a lot of times that can motivate you or give you some extra energy to do that. The good stress is usually going to be short term, and we believe that we can do it, rather than, we think, well, my boss gives me so many things, I can't keep up on it. I'm never going to be successful at this. So those are when stress becomes really difficult, is when we believe it's out of our ability to really be successful. So we're really looking for the stress that's going to be motivating, that's going to be short term, that feels exciting. Like I said, very similar to kind of goals or deadlines. It really helps us to perform more successfully. So kind of a diagram showing you guys what that looks like. So it's kind of a balance of having some stress and being pushed, to perform successfully. So if we're in that kind of middle ground there, then that's where we're going to perform at the best of our abilities and feel the best in our lives. So a lot of us think about being on vacation and just not having to work and not having anything to cause us any trouble. And before long, that's going to be really, really difficult for us. A vacation's great and we should all take them. But if if it's forever, and we don't have any goals or things we're trying to accomplish, then we're not very happy as people. One thing to think about with that is maybe jobs that you've had that don't push you very much, that you just do the same thing over and over, and it's not very exciting, it's not meeting any of your goals. Those jobs can be very difficult on us, and we don't stay in them very long because they don't push us to reach higher. They don't motivate us to be successful. So just think about that at the moment. So in thinking about eustress and the distress, so a lot of times it's our perception of the stressor that causes us to think about, is this a good stress or is this a bad stress? There's a lot of stories that kind of will go along with that. You'll want to think about, this stress as being a challenge, these difficult things, rather than an obstacle that you can't overcome. If it's a challenge, as human beings, we do a lot of challenging things. I'm thinking about even that, I don't know what tax commercial that is now, but I'm sure you guys have seen it on TV, that, it talks about all these amazing things that humans do, but, we can't do our taxes. But so as you're thinking about it, we do challenging things every day. And if we can think about, this is a challenge that I'm going to be successful at, it's going to help me, rather than this is an obstacle that I'm stuck behind, that there's nothing that I can do about it. No matter how hard I try, I'm not going to get over it. So challenges are good. Obstacles that we can't get over are going to be bad. That's kind of ways to think about how do we use stress to our advantage. So in counseling, there's a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm going to teach you about that just for a second. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about that. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the most famous therapy in the world. But this is kind of how it works. You know, situations happen that we don't have a lot of control over. You know, maybe somebody cuts you off on the road, or your boss gives you a new project to do, or your children are doing something that's upsetting you. So a lot of different situations happen that we don't have a lot of control over at times. So then from that situation, you'll usually have some automatic thoughts that pop up. Say you were really stressed and your boss gave you another project like we talked about, then your thought could be, I can't handle another thing, or I'm not going to be successful at this. And those thoughts lead to emotion, you know, whether that's being discouraged or sad or frustrated. All of these different emotions come up, and then those emotions lead to what your behavior is going to be. You know, maybe I quit my job. Maybe I, you know, be like, well, I can't keep them happy anyway, so I'm just not even going to try. And then your behaviors kind of reflect. So in every situation that comes up, these things happen. You have a thought, an emotion, and a behavior that sometimes happen really quick, but every time that's what's happening. So if you can go back and not change the situation, but change the thought, then you can change your emotions and your behaviors. So say somebody cut you off on the road, and you thought, you know, you tried to change your thought, and it was like, well, maybe they got something really busy going on, or maybe their wife's pregnant, or whatever it is. And so your thought is, you know, maybe it's not that big a deal. Nobody was hurt. You know, everything was fine, and they must have something really important they're going to. If you could change your thought to that, then your emotion would be, most likely you'd still be the same emotion you were, whether that was happy, or maybe you're even relieved. You know, maybe it's like a kind of a patience type of emotion. And then your behavior would be, I'm not going to chase them down. I'm not going to honk my horn at them. You know, all of these different things that we could do, we're not going to do those because we changed our thought to be more in line with what we want. So just kind of in thinking about that, guys, I want you to think about, how can I change my thought in these different situations that's going to affect my emotion and behaviors. So I'm just kind of looking at some what people are saying in the chat, and one person said, you know, please mute if you're not speaking. So if everybody could do that. But thank you very much for all the chat and everything that you're saying. You guys have some really good ideas. So please let me know if you have any other thoughts that you want to say.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That sounds wonderful for the short term. How do you apply that to a long term? I'm an adult switching from parents taking care of us as kids to us as adults taking care of our parents. And so there's a long-term situation. It's not a short-term. Yeah. How do you motivate yourself for, you know, it's going to happen for another 20 years?
Yeah. I think one important thing is to change your thought about why you're doing this. Why is taking care of your parents important to you? And if you're able to say, you know, I'm really thankful for all my parents have done, and I feel like this is the right thing to do, and this is what, you know, this is the goal, this is what's good about that, then I think you can change that thought, and then that can impact your emotions and your behaviors for the long term. And one thing we're talking about with some of this stuff, guys, is habits. Habits, if you have, you know, negative thinking habits, or even positive, it's kind of hard to change, and it takes time to change some of those habits. And so after a while, they will change. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But it takes some time and some real effort to change some of those thoughts that you have, because we all have those automatic thoughts that come up. And a lot of times, in our society, they're negative automatic. Really need to work on those. But if you can find a reason, a motivation why you're taking care of your friend, why that's important to you, why you want to do it, then I think that's really going to benefit you and help with that emotion and actions on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a thought by Viktor Frankl. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about him. He wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, which is a fantastic book. But he said this, and I'll read it to you guys. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So to me, that means, when something happens, when a situation happens, a stimulus, we have a response to that. But before that, we have a chance to pick what our response is going to be. And what we pick is going to make us happy, is going to give us freedom, is going to make us successful, or do the negative. It can make us unhappy. Stephen R. Covey, he read this a long time ago, and this is where he came out from. This quote is what helped him write the seven Habits of Highly Effective People, because he liked this quote so much, how it benefited him. So it was a really good one. Okay. So that beginning quote that I told you about is from this lady, Kelly McGonigal. And so she has a wonderful TED Talk that I really, really like, that, is how to make stress your friend. And so if you're ever interested in listening to a talk about stress and how to make it your friend and then how to be really successful with it, she gives a really good one. I just listened to it again today, and it's been viewed over 22 million times. So it's a really good one. Some things that she talks about with that is how you think about stress really matters for your health. So just like we said in the beginning, if you see stress as, this can help me to be successful, I can work through this. This is a challenge that's going to help me to become what I want to be, even in a difficult situation. Then, like we said in the beginning, you're more healthy than people that have a lot of stress and do nothing about it. Like I said, 43% more healthy than them. She talks about how our bodies are set up to have stress in our lives and to repair any damage that stress would do to us. So that kind of your physical response, our bodies are amazing that way, that they're able to help stress to not be difficult on our hearts. And that's something that we worry about with stress is that it can be, heart attacks and things like that. But the way we choose to look at it and what we do with stress impacts how our body deals with it. And it actually sends oxytocin from our brains to our heart to repair any damage. That's why those people are more healthy than the people that say they have no stress. Stress also makes us want to be connected with other people. Makes us want to talk about our stress a lot of times. Makes us want to, receive, support. Hence why counseling is an important part of stress management, and friends and support. So if you view her TED Talk and like what she's saying, she has a book that's called The Upside of Stress, which, like I said, goes into a lot more detail about all of these things, and will show you, all the studies and the documentation, and is very entertaining. Exercise is huge, and so one of her other passions is exercise. And so I'm currently, reading The Joy of Movement, which is a new book of hers, but it just talks about how exercise, really helps our bodies and helps us to manage stress and all of these amazing things. So the upside of stress is going to be the stress book that she has, that the Joy of Movement book, which is fantastic. Okay, so I want to
Can
teach you.
you, excuse me,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you tell us her name again? What is her name? The
Yeah.
author and the speaker on that TED Talk?
Yeah, good question. Her name is Kelly McGonigal. I can spell her last name for you if you're not looking at the slide. It's McGonigal. And if you just put in Kelly
Great.
McGonigal and said TED Talk, it would come up. And like I said, it would have been viewed a few times, so you would really like it.
And with that,
Awesome. Thank you.
some of you, like I mentioned at the beginning, didn't put your last name, or you signed into this with a different, like a weird different name. I'm just sending you private chats to find out what your last names are so I can mark you down. And the reason I'm marking you down is so that I can send you the recording of this video and all of these things that Justin's talking about. So you'll have them in an email. So if you didn't log on to this with your last name or your first name and last name where I can tell that it's you, please send me a private chat so that I can make sure that you get it.
Okay. Any other questions before we go on and talk about a reservoir? Okay. So a reservoir is a good way to look at managing stress. So if you think about a reservoir, and in this picture, if you can see it, it's to hold a healthy balance of water. And when it holds a healthy balance of water, then it does its job really well. As you can see, some water's coming out, whether that's for electricity or that's for drinking water. That's some of what reservoirs are for. So it has to have water coming back in to be able to have water coming out. And so something to kind of think about with that. So if we're thinking about this with managing stress, we always have things that is taking the water out of our ability to manage stress. Some of those things are, like we talked about, school and work, and all of those things are going to be taking water out. We have to have ways to put water back in. We're going to talk about those two. For you guys, what do you think are some things that take water out of your reservoir, make life difficult for you, or give you stress? What would you guys say? I'll look at the chat and read a couple of these, and I know a lot of you can see them. Change is a big one. Coworkers is one thing that can cause you stress. Hopefully it can be beneficial too. Money stress is a big one. Webinars. Come on, guys. Relationships, like you said, all of these things. Keeping things to yourself, huge things. And what I would tell you with this is there's probably not a number that's enough that could say how many things take stress away from you. That drain, the water out, that cause us stress. And so you guys are naming a lot of the big ones. But as you think about, these things are things that aren't really going away anytime soon. A lot of people this time of year will even tell me the weather causes them stress. And not even that it's hard to drive in, just that, it's dark and it's dreary outside, the sun's not out. All of these things, can cause us a little bit of stress. Growing older, money, can do things that before long, if we don't manage them too well, then just like this picture, our reservoir is going to turn into a desert. So for you guys, what do you think? What adds water to your reservoir? What is your river or snow or things that add water to the reservoir for you? What kind of comes to mind? What helps? Friends, sleep, exercise, alone time, even kids sometimes, meditation, having friends, supports, laughing, really, really good ideas. And like I said, so there's as many things that take water out and hopefully there's a ton of things that put water back in. There's three that I want to start with, and these three are on your screen. I usually like to talk about 5 things in the beginning when I'm meeting with a client. And these are 3 of them that seem to be really, really beneficial. Like I told you, I'm reading that Joy of Movement book. It's amazing what exercise does. You know, the national guidelines are we should be exercising for 150 minutes a week. So if you break that down, that's 5 times a week for 30 minutes. There's a really, really good, it's a YouTube video that's called the 23.5-hour intervention. And all it talks about is if you walk for a half hour, I think it's 5 times a week, the amazing benefits that you get from that. The reduction in anxiety and depression and obviously the physical things and what it does to our bodies. And so exercise is hugely, hugely important for that. It's a lot harder to exercise and to feel very good if we're not sleeping. Sleeping is one of the hardest things that if we're not doing, we're going to feel terrible, and it's going to be very, very difficult to manage stress, to manage life in general. So finding some way to try to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day is very, very important. And counseling, coming in here, whatever it is, coming up with a good sleep hygiene and a good system about how to get enough sleep is really important. I know for me, I'm always right on the edge of 6 to 7 hours, just because I don't want to go to bed too much earlier and I want to exercise in the morning. So really, really important for me to make sure I'm trying to get to bed by 11 for me to feel good every day. These 3 go really well together. Go ahead, Heather.
I've got a couple questions. Well, one, Brenda, it looks like you pushed the raise hand on here. So if you have a question, feel free to just pop in and ask. And then someone asked if you could talk about go more in depth on how stress can cause heart issues.
So, and that's something that TED Talk, the Kelly McGonigal TED Talk will talk about too. But stress, when we have stress and we're not viewing it in a way that's beneficial, and it's kind of stress that's with us for a long time, it constricts our veins and makes it so blood going through them is a lot harder and makes our hearts work harder. And so that's one of the reasons why they think stress has an impact on heart attacks. And so if we can view stress and we can reduce stress and manage it as much as we can, then for one, even though we might have some stress in our lives, our bodies react in a way that it looks like we have courage and even in happiness. And so it actually expands the amount of blood flow that's going through our veins and makes it a lot more likely that we're going to reduce the risk of heart attack. And so something to really think about with, like I said, that TED Talk will talk about it more, and her book will go into detail about why that's beneficial. Good question. Any other questions that we can?
Not directed to me.
Okay. Okay. So a few things about adding water. Like I said, there's 5 that I talk about in the beginning that I think are the most important. And people are usually doing pretty well if they're doing these 5 things pretty well. So communicating your stress is hugely important. And you don't need a therapist to do that. If you want to meet with a therapist to do that, fantastic. That's what we're there for. But I want you to have supports in your life that are important to you, that you feel like I can talk about good things, bad things, stressful things, everything that's going on. You have to have people in your life to support you. And like I told you in that TED Talk, when it talks about that, when we do that, your body releases stress hormones that goes and fix any damage that stress would ever do to your heart. That kind of goes along with the heart attack. And then doing things that you enjoy. I haven't met too many happy people that aren't doing things that make them happy. So you have to find ways in your schedule to do things that make you happy. They don't have to be huge things. They don't have to be this month-long vacation. Vacations are great, and I want you to do them. But it can be as simple as, I have this book that I love to read, or I love going on a walk out in nature and it feels really great. It could be crocheting. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that it's something that you enjoy and it makes you happy. Listening to music, exercise, huge amount of things, but make sure you're finding time to put those in there.
Hey, Justin, I have a comment.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing that I do daily that reminds me that it's okay to have my stress is I ask my question, what is it I'm uncomfortable about? Is it okay for me to be uncomfortable right now? And I've learned that uncomfortableness makes me grow, if that's a word, uncomfortableness. So it's like stress, is that stress or is that I'm just uncomfortable? Well, it's stress, but it's like, okay. And I reevaluate that and I just say to myself, I give my permission, to be uncomfortable, and I can learn from that because I'm going to grow from that. And I'm just way more present, way more aware. So you're just living in it a little bit. And then you're like, okay, if I need to do something about it, great. If I don't, you just do it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great comment. And I think one thing that goes along with that is we're all going to feel stress. And so learning to be able to manage it and learning to be able to feel some of it is okay. Just like a little bit of anxiety in our lives is good. It motivates us to do things. It tells us what's important. When it takes over, then it's not such of a good thing. And so, but a little bit helps us to be really successful. Thank you very much for that, Carol. Some more things to add water. Like I said, there's thousands of these, and you need to find out which ones help you. Learning to say no is a huge, huge thing. Very important word in our language, especially not as much when we're a kid, but when we're older. But planning, if you have a really stressful thing that's happening, maybe you are overloaded at work and your boss keeps giving you extra things. Making a plan about how to talk to your boss about that and how to work through some of that stress can be really, really beneficial. Organizing your time and even organizing your desk and making it look more presentable and house can make you feel a lot better. Somebody said laughing earlier. I've listened to talks before that they'll say the best thing that we can do to reduce stress is laugh. Is just to enjoy some things going on, to watch a cat video or whatever it is, to help us to, think about something else for a moment. So huge, many, many different things that you can do. I would start with those first 5 and think about those. And then, okay, those are helping me. Those are making a difference. What else can I do that might help? What other things are coming up for me? What other plans do I need to make? So talk about a couple more things, and I'll give you a couple, maybe 5 minutes at the end to ask any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions that you really want to know about, maybe maybe 5 minutes we'll talk about those. But kind of the treadmill of life. So for one, I put this picture on there because that looks like my treadmill at home. But what happens if you're on a treadmill and you get tired? Most people would say, I slow the treadmill down, or I turn off the incline, or I get off the treadmill. And those are very normal responses. And so then the question becomes, okay, well, how about the treadmill of life? What happens when we start to get burned out with life and work and everything else? The sad answer is we stop doing the things that help. We stop doing the things that fill up our reservoir. We stop going out to lunch with one of our friends that we have a great relationship with. We're just too busy to exercise, so we stop exercising. I used to, do this really fun thing. I used to try to read a book a month. And now I just don't have time to do that. I'm just too busy with kids and all of these things. And so what happens is, instead of slowing the treadmill down, we actually turn up the pace of the treadmill until, I know you guys have all seen this on Facebook or Instagram, until we finally fall off the treadmill and smash our faces. But we don't want to do that. Make sure you guys, when life is feeling so busy and it's, you're feeling really stressed and burnt out, that you're taking some time to figure out, okay, how do I fill up my reservoir? The gas tank idea is an easy way to think about that. When you get in your car and you're looking at your gas tank and how much gas you have, I want you to kind of think about, where's my reservoir at? Am I running on empty? Am I about halfway, or am I doing well? If you're running on empty, I want you to take a minute to really think about, why am I struggling? What is going on? Why is the treadmill going so fast for me? What are things that I can do to help slow down the treadmill? And with that, like I said, Blanc-Postel is for sure here to help you with that. But even in your own thoughts, you can make a lot of progress just by thinking about, what could I do a little bit? What are some things that helped me fill up my reservoir in the past? What is something that's really taking the water out? And really kind of just gauge how you're doing it with the gas tank. So as we talked about some sources of help, family, friends, religious leaders, coworkers, obviously us here at the EAP, we want to help as much as possible, but anybody else you can think to talk to, I would tell you to do that one. Setting goals is hugely important to manage stress. If you find out what's causing you stress, and then you can think about, okay, well, what could be a goal that I could put into place to reduce some of this? Maybe I need to find more time to do something that makes me happy. Maybe I do need to spend some time with my friends and make this a goal. These questions can kind of help you. With goal setting, you can think about the SMART goals that, it's going to be specific, and it's going to be something that you can really make sure that you can test. And so if it's a long-term goal, I would want you to have some little short-term goals that go along with that, so that it's not, well, this goal's a year away, or this goal's 20 pounds away, or whatever it is. What is some short-term things that can show you that you're making progress in it? You're going to be more successful. So goal setting can be huge. I want to spend probably 2 last slides for you, and then we'll answer any questions. This is kind of some really interesting statistics and goes along with happiness. But this lady, Sonia, she came up with they tested chronic happiness for people. So 50% of people from her studies are chronically happy because they were born that way. They don't have to do a ton to make themselves happy. They were just, it's kind of in their DNA. So 50% of people are like that. 10% of people that are chronically happy are that way because of things that we think makes everybody happy. Really good jobs, or cars, or money, all of status, all of those things that we think make us happy. Really, only 10% of people are happy because of that. So very, very low. The other 40% of people that are happy are because of intentional activities. Because of the things, like I said, filling up that reservoir. Things they actually do to make themselves happy. This last slide I'm going to show you that has a TED Talk with it. So it's Sean Accor. And so his TED Talk is The Happy Secrets to Better Work. But these 5 things listed are 5 things that he says will make us happier and reduce our stress on a daily basis. And so his TED Talk will talk about this. We'll go into more detail on each one of these. But from his work, and he's, studies at Harvard and has taught at Harvard and went to school there. But he suggests that our brain at positive is 31% more productive than our brain at negative, neutral, or stress. And so if we can find ways to reduce stress and manage it better, not to take it away, but to manage it and to be positive in a lot of different things, our brains are going to work 31% better in anything that we do. So if we're selling things, we're going to sell things better. If we're a therapist, we're going to listen better, and we're going to interact better, and we're going to remember things better. So these types of things can really affect how you feel every day, how successful you're going to be. Well, obviously you got exercise on there. You got breathing or meditation. You got random acts of kindness, which is hugely important for how we feel every day. And that random act of kindness is as simple as sending somebody a text or an email or thanking them. It's opening the door for somebody or smiling. So simple things. The 3 acts of gratitude. So each night or day, you can write down 3 things that you're thankful for, and they have to be specific. I wouldn't want it to be, well, my kids, my car, and the weather every day. It could be those things, but I want you to be specific about why it's those things. Well, I'm really thankful for my kids because when I came home, they cleaned up the house, or they said something really nice. So it can be that, but it needs to be specific. Last thing for you, the doubler is, so for 2 minutes every day, it's thinking about one positive experience that happened that day. One thing about our brains is they can't tell the difference between if it's actually happening or if we're just visualizing it. So that can bring back all those positive experiences that happened that one. Visualizing is so important in many different ways. Okay. Well, any questions? I mean, we got about 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like answered about Hotel or stress or anything?
One question that did come through the chat. She said, and I'm probably going to butcher how this is said, but how do you feel about herbal supplements like GABA or ashwagandha to calm yourself down when feeling stressed?
Yeah. It's a really good question, and I'm not going to tell you, I'm not the expert on that, and somebody else is welcome to speak if they would like. I know people for sure that they feel like that has helped and that has been really beneficial for them. And so if you feel like it helps you, then it's worth a try. And if you're wondering about it, it's like, okay, well, if you try it and you don't like it, then stop. But if you feel like it's beneficial, then obviously I would tell you to keep going with it. But I wouldn't tell you I'm an expert on knowing what that's totally mean.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Look in the chat. See.
Justin, I'll add to that. I know, I'm also a therapist there, and magnesium is very, very high in studies with sleep. Number 1, it's a sleep aid. Number 2, it is part of the mental health, natural supplements, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D3, and your B vitamins are essential in that. There's lots of studies on that, and I have studied up on that. So magnesium at night is one of the best things because it's a natural muscle relaxer, sleep aid. That's just one tiny little thing that it does.
I'm seeing a lot of great suggestions and thoughts in the comments section. So if you guys have a second, you're welcome to look at that. One thing that I saw that kind of came up is people are talking about being busy, and that's totally true. Even though you're busy, all of us can find some time to do something that takes some stress away. Somebody said in the chat that even 10 minutes once I pull in my house, and for those 10 minutes I stay in my car or de-stress or whatever it is. If you're feeling very busy, which I'm going to tell you a lot of you are, you need to find some way to get some stress relief. Maybe it's a podcast on the way home. Maybe you have some music that you really love that you can listen to that helps you to calm down and feel better about your life. Maybe, you spend some time so you're taking care of your kids, maybe you go on a walk, and so it's finding little ways to take care of yourself. Like somebody said in the chat, if you can't, if you're happy and you're taking care of yourself, then you can help everybody else out so much more successfully. If you're not doing very well yourself, it's going to be very, very difficult to help anyone else. And so some of that is, evaluating where you are. Okay, well, my water in my reservoir is pretty low. What are some small, simple things that I can do, even though I'm really busy, that might help me to enjoy life more? Like I said, it's up to you to find out what those are, but it's simple things. Writing in a journal, it could be reading a book, it could be having a conversation with my kids at the dinner table so we don't have to spend extra time. Whatever it is, it's finding little things that help. And if you're not able to find those on your own, please come in and see us and we can help you out.